Welcome to Planet Raconteur, where we who tell stories rule this world. I am your host, Yuck Nasty. Allow me to be your guide into our world, filled with sights and sounds, both wonderful and frightening. Our first story tonight is called Today I Will Attend My Own Funeral. The raconteur of this one is the powerful Baugh Anthem. We hope you enjoy.
Today I will attend my own funeral. And in less than 24 hours, I will be dead. My death comes as no surprise and for no other reason than that of random chance. Dying simply as a victim of circumstance in the place of another. I am in the most pain I've ever been in, both physically and emotionally, and my body is deteriorating quickly. Most of my remaining day will be lived out in pain with fever, sweating, and difficulty breathing, until my cells completely stop producing protein and I die. This report, while short, stands as my last will and testament to the world about my life and the murder that ended it. To my family, I'm sorry this has happened and that things have to end this way. Trust me when I say that I would like nothing more than added time with each of you. It is grossly unfair that a parent outlived their child, and this is no exception. I love you all dearly and wish the best to all of you. We all want a happy ending, but we've seen enough movies and faced enough tragedies to know it doesn't always play out that way. Stay strong and continue on, because part of the journey is the end, but it's not the end for you yet, so don't stop pushing forward. I leave behind no wife, no children, and sadly enough, not even a pet. But what I do leave behind are memories with my friends and my family that have touched my heart and I hope cause you to look back with fondness someday. If you're reading this, that means you found this testimony one of two ways. If you've been invited to attend my funeral, you found this memoir on your chair with a personalized message to you from me on the back of this sheet. This is my honest and most heartfelt goodbye to each friend and family member I've chosen to impart these words to. While a much more generic version will be uploaded to Reddit in hopes the world can find my killer and bring him to justice. Let my last moments be used to educate yourselves on the dangers we are faced with in the world daily. In the absence of time, I plan to condense many of the details of the past few days, as the effects of the poison racing through my body have already begun to devolve my health. The stomach pain increases even as I type and soon will be unbearable. That being said, I do want to at least offer a concise timeline of the past few days to hopefully clear up any questions you may have, and so that each of you understand why I've abruptly invited you to attend my funeral on such short notice. 2 nights ago, I was sitting in my second-story Camden, New Jersey apartment, watching reruns of Friends on Netflix after what I considered at the time to be a long day at work. I realize now that I had no concept of a long day, and nothing my job had ever thrown at me would hold a candle to the anguish I would face in the days to come. Unknown to me, a man had broken into my apartment that night with full intent to end my life. The man had somehow forced his way into my apartment while I was at work and had been hiding in my bedroom for what must have been hours. I got up from the couch to change my clothes for bed, and when I opened my bedroom door, the man lunged at me from the side of the door frame. I was completely caught off guard and hadn't even had a chance to turn the lights on in the room, so I couldn't make out his appearance at all. I collapsed on the ground as the force of the man's body fell hard on my chest and left shoulder. I struggled to get free, but he was heavier than I am, and to my detriment, I'm not particularly strong. I kicked my legs as violently as I could and managed to get him to roll off to my left side. I crawled out of the room and tried to get my footing, but I felt a sharp, piercing sensation in my right arm. An impulse, I grabbed at the area where I felt the sharp pain and pulled out what was undeniably a syringe. The man, now also outside the room, was standing over me, looking down as he grabbed for the syringe. Now, in the light of the living room, I finally got a good look at him. He was aged somewhere in his early 30s and not much taller than I am, so I'd say about 5 feet 10 inches. He had side-swept brown hair with a distinctive white patch in the middle of the top of his hair and brown eyes. He had a pretty dark complexion, which, as far as I could tell, was just a tan and not a racial identifier. He wore a black hoodie and had a tattoo of some kind of tiger on his left arm. The man proceeded to inform me that he knew I had been fucking his wife, Julie, and he had been watching my apartment for days, waiting for the right moment to exact his revenge. He had moved into the building across the street with his wife a little over 3 months ago and noticed she was spending a lot of time away from home. He told me that his paranoia had been building for quite some time and that he had started following her when she left at night. Of course, he found her consistently going to this building and this room. In a blind rage fueled by the thought of his wife having an affair, he researched options of effectively poisoning a person that would both be hard to trace and easy to use, subsequently outlining a plan to take the life of the man sleeping with his wife. The intruder informed me that he had gotten his hands on some castor beans and began the process of making ricin. A lot of this information is readily available on the internet, and a quick Google search was all he needed. The dose of ricin he injected in me was a lethal one. The process of making ricin is very intentional, and as I quickly learned over these past couple of days, there is currently no antidote for ricin, and it's frighteningly hard to detect. Ricin prevents cells from making the proteins they need and causes the body cells to die. The injection was quick, and I would have somewhere in the ballpark of 3 days to live. In an unfortunate turn of events that I have had to come to terms with, the man was actually looking for my roommate, Brian. This came as no real surprise to me because my roommate had mentioned countless times that he was having sex with a married woman and that it fulfilled some primal need within him, mixed with the thrill of secrecy. Brian and I had become roommates through Facebook, and I've always hated him. He is one of the cockiest and most entitled people I have ever met, but offered a really sweet deal on rent payments that I couldn't pass up at the time. Luckily for me, he was away a lot because of his job, which made living with him tolerable. If you are reading this, Brian, I just wanted to let you know you're losing a roommate. I'm sure the police have contacted you by now, so you know most of this already. I didn't personally know him, but I put up a post looking for a cheap apartment, and he was looking for a roommate to split rent with and take care of the apartment while he was away on business trips. It worked out in the beginning since it was mostly like I lived alone. Splitting the rent payments with Brian was great, but I soon grew fed up with him coming home in drunken stupors after his business trips and having sex with random women he'd met in bars. Living with Brian was awkward, and being around him when he was drunk was intolerable. All the sex and the swearing were degrading to watch. He used my room for his one-night stands while I was at work, and he constantly left dirty laundry all over the apartment. None of it matters at this point. He had just left on yet another business trip roughly 3 days prior. He would be gone for about 2 weeks in Chicago and then have a week-long conference in San Diego. I explained the situation regarding my roommate to the intruder, and as I would have expected from a man in his state of mind, he didn't believe a word I said. He still thought I was the one having the affair and that I was trying to process that I was dying. I was in a panic, knowing that I was poisoned and fearing for my life. I attacked him. I threw punches frantically and was crying hysterically. The man fought back, kicking me in the ribcage and dislocated my right shoulder. I fought as best I could, but the man was stronger, bigger, and obviously more experienced than I was. He beat me within an inch of my life and left me there on the cold floor to die. I'd blacked out from the beating and came to hours later. I called 911 and the ambulance came. Paramedics and police officers swarmed the apartment trying to get me stabilized and searching for any evidence to track my assailant, but he had been meticulous. The doctors confirmed that I had only days to live and tried treating my symptoms as best they could. It had been hours before I received any medical attention, and by that point, it was too little too late. I spent most of the day yesterday getting things ready for my passing. Preparing my finances, finalizing my will, and organizing funeral services. I contacted the funeral director to complete the death certificate upon my passing and properly transport and cremate my remains. I've prepaid the funeral home for the service today and notified the bank of my death. Before doing so, I added my mom and dad to my checking and savings account so that my accounts would not be frozen and they could use the money to pay my expenses. The pastor came by this afternoon to pray with me and set up arrangements for the service. The church even provided the flowers. I'm getting myself ready as I type this and will be wearing my best suit. I'm leaving here momentarily for the funeral home to share my last interactions with each of you. Though I don't know how much I'll be able to say, I'm sweating profusely from the fever and my lungs are getting progressively tighter. The treatments the doctor gave me are wearing off. I'm trying my best not to bring you down with too many details. The hardest part of these last few days has been the mental strain. I've processed through a lot and lived in panic and anger, but when the reality of what has happened hit me, I had to accept and make peace with my future. To the best of my ability, that is what I've done. And I hope this letter, along with the personalized messages to each of you, will be enough. It won't be long, but I've seen the funeral layout, and it'll be a beautiful service. The last thing I have to do is upload this file and step into my casket. I don't know of a person in history that has had the privilege of stepping into their own casket. And if you'd asked me 3 days ago, I'd have said that wouldn't be a privilege at all. A lot has changed since then, and whether I like it or not, it's time that I rest in peace. My only hope is that my killer is found.
That was today. I will attend my own funeral. We'll be back with our next story after a word from our sponsors. Our second story of the night is by Darrell Z. Grizzle and is titled, What My Family Should Know in the Event of My Demise. If you ever suspected that your uncle had something weird buried in his basement, then this might be the story for you. The Raconteur on this one is our very own Papa Dave.
This is a story by Darrell Z. Grizzle. What my family should know in the event of my demise. The passwords for my email and other accounts are in a little moleskin notebook I keep in the center drawer of my desk in my home office. I also keep track of them in a Word file on my computer titled Passwords. My checkbook and other financial papers are in the left-hand drawer. My funeral should be a simple one, nothing too fancy. My favorite scripture passage is Ecclesiastes chapter 3. to everything there is a season. I'd like to be cremated with my ashes spread in the woods behind the house. Please feel free to split up whatever belongings I left behind. I know most of it's books and records and CDs that you may or may not want to keep. That's okay. But be aware that some of the Grateful Dead albums, especially the ones in the Road Trips and Dave's Pick subscription series, are now worth over $100 each. I do have a safe deposit box, and it's at the bank, where I keep a few family heirlooms like grandmother's pearl necklace and great-grandpa's flintlock pistol that he used in that duel. You'll want to keep them in the family, I'm sure. Whoever takes care of the cats after I'm gone, please keep them together. They're brothers, and they shouldn't be split up. If I died alone in the house, and it was a while before my body was found and the cats ate my face, please don't hold it against them. They're just being cats. As you know, I never married and I don't have kids. Unless you count the feral children who live in the woods behind the house. They come up to the back porch occasionally where I leave food out for them. Whenever they see me, they hiss and run away. So don't be surprised if they treat you the exact same way. I've occasionally mentioned in my Facebook page the loathsome hellspawn that lives in the crawl space under the house. I'm sure most people have assumed that it was just part of my macabre sense of humor. But you should be aware, especially if you intend to sell the house, it's not a joke. He, and listen, I don't know his name, is the reason for the 2 padlocks on the crawl space door. The keys to the padlocks are in the key bowl in the kitchen where I keep my car keys. Now, he feeds on human flesh, but I found this. If I go and dig up a fresh corpse from the nearby cemetery once a month or so, that'll keep him sated. The corpses, of course, are already dead. So there's not going to be a need for murder, despite what he tells you. The corpses also keep him from trying to escape and go after the feral children, who, as you remember, lives in the woods, right? The shovel and other grave-robbing implements are on the back porch, near the cat food. I can easily fit one dead body in the trunk of my car, and I've been doing this for years. So if you intend to sell the car, you might want to air out the trunk and use a lot of Febreze. Well, I think that about covers the important stuff, but if I left anything out, you can probably contact me through Charlie, the tarot reader down at the coffee shop. He's actually a very adept medium, so he should be able to contact my ghost if you have any further questions. The end.
That was What My Family Should Know in the Event of My Demise by Darrell Z. Grizzle. We'll be back with our final story right after this. Our last one tonight is called Schrodinger's Outlaw, and it's by Matthew W. Baugh. It's a Western, kind of. And then again, kind of not. Give it a listen and see what you think.
Schrodinger's Outlaw by Matthew W. Baugh. The small gray man walked into Ben Murphy's office and stared at him with enormous black eyes. Ben had seen a lot during his 15 years as sheriff of Chavez County, but nothing like this naked, spindly-limbed, huge-headed critter. For that matter, he couldn't rightly say whether the thing was a man or not, despite the lack of pants. Still, Ben knew the value of remaining calm and helpful, whatever the situation.
Can I help you?
The little man, Ben decided that was the simplest way to think of the critter, blinked its eyes. Are you the sheriff? The little man's small mouth didn't move. The pleasant baritone just seemed to come from thin air. Ben was impressed, but worked against looking startled or looking around the room for the source of the voice. A lawman has to be calm and controlled at all times, or there won't be any respect for the law. That had been Ben's credo for his time in office, and he saw no reason to change that now.
I am,
he said. My name is Orlatual, the critter replied. I was in your jurisdiction and thought that we could help each other.
What did you have in mind?
I'm a bounty hunter, Orlatual said.
Can't say I care much for your profession.
You are not alone in this dislike. But nevertheless, I have adhered to the local laws and customs quite scrupulously. I hope that will ameliorate your attitude. Ben frowned at the big words and wondered if Orlatual was trying to make him look ignorant. That was something Del Martinson, the town's only lawyer, liked to do, and it irked Ben something fierce.
Can I take it that you've bagged an outlaw?
He asked. I have brought in the Wichita Kid, the little man replied. I have used a box rather than a bag. At that, the door opened again, and two more creatures, identical to Orlatual, at least as far as Ben could see, walked in, guiding a metal box that floated about 6 inches off the floor. The shiny black container was the size and shape of an upended coffin, and its surface seemed to be seamless.
The kid's in there?
He is.
What kind of box is that?
It is a quantum entanglement chamber, Orlatual replied. The Wichita Kid is inside, along with a radioactive source and a flask of poison. If the atom has undergone decay, then a special mechanism will have released the poison and the kid will be dead. If the atom has not decayed, the poison will not have been released and the kid will be unharmed. Since the decay of the atom is contingent on the influence of an observer, the Wichita Kid currently exists in a state of quantum uncertainty. Only when you open the chamber will the situation resolve itself into one outcome. Ben opened his desk drawer, took out a wad of tobacco, and bit off a plug. He rose and walked around the box, chewing thoughtfully. Is this not the custom in your jurisdiction?
Can't say I've ever seen anybody go to this much trouble before.
The poster said he was wanted dead or alive, Orlatual said. I know of no other way I could have brought him to you in the state you requested.
Well, there you go. Another trip to Planet Raconteur. On behalf of myself and the two amazing Raconteurs, Bobby Anthem and Papa Dave, we would like to thank you for listening. All of the stories presented on Planet Raconteur are used by permission or are in the public domain. Check out the show notes for details on the authors, their websites, and their other releases. And make sure to subscribe and follow us on all social media platforms. All of those links will be found in those same show notes. Much love again. And thanks for visiting the Planet Raconteur.